It only takes a few minutes to upgrade your content from this to this using free color grading tools in Capcut. And today, I'm gonna show you a beginner-friendly process that gets incredible results every time. Let's dive in. Okay, first, I want to give you an idea of what to expect in this video. We'll start by covering the color grading tools within Capcut. This is key because all footage is different, and to really create that unique final look you find appealing, you need to understand how the tools work together and impact different elements of your footage. While we explain these tools, I'm going to walk through some practical examples showing common beginner mistakes and how we can solve them with the different tools. After that, we're going to tie it all together and do a few start to finish walkthroughs showing exactly how I color grade different types of footage to really make the content pop. All of that footage will be linked below in the description so you can download and follow along with me. And then finally, we'll end the video by showing some unique effects and presets that can further enhance your footage and speed up your workflow. There might even be some free preset downloads for those of you who stick around to the end of the video, so definitely stay tuned. But nonetheless, here we are on my computer in the desktop program. Keep in mind that you can follow along in your mobile app if that's what you prefer. The same tools that I have on the computer exist in the mobile app as well. Now I've got some footage down here on the timeline, and to open up the color grading tools, we want to make sure we select the clip that we want to edit, come up here to the top right and select the Adjust tab. From there, we have 5 sub-tabs that represent all the different color grading tools. Up first in the Basic tab, we have some features that are reserved for the Pro subscription only. You can totally ignore these. You do not need them to get great results. After that, we have the LUT sub-tab. Now, LUTs are really cool. They're basically color grading presets. I have some custom LUTs on my computer, and you can select them here. And right, it's going to change the look and give you a bunch of different variations. We'll talk more about this at the end. And like I said, I might have some free ones for you. But moving on, we have the Adjust tab, and this is where a lot of the magic happens. Now, to understand how these tools work, I want you to go up here to this stack of 3 lines, click on it, hover over Color Oscilloscope, and then click on Show. What this is going to do is open up these 3 graphs beneath your image, and they really help you understand the color and light data of your image. To explain how these work, focus on this middle one right now, and check what happens when I move the frame around. You can see the lines and kind of graphical data mirrors what's happening. You can see there on the right-hand side of the image, my thumb and hand is going up and down. And in that graph on the right side, you're also seeing that data kind of reflect the motion of my hand. And that's because this is literally a graphical representation of the color and light data of the image at that frame that we're currently seeing. And it's broken down into 3 different wavelengths. You have red, green, and blue. Those are the 3 primary colors that are mixed together that make up what you see in that final image. Now, at the top of this graph, up in this range, that represents our highlights. So the brighter portions of the screen, like my face, the screen, the light, the kind of well-lit parts of the background, all of that is kind of represented up here. Then we have the shadows, which is underneath. We have the dark areas in the shelf. We have my darker clothing, the chair, the kind of corners of the frame. Those represent the shadows. If we were to take something like the highlight tab right here and increase that, you can see that is stretching that top portion of the graph, making just the highlights brighter. Same exact thing for the shadows. If we raise the shadows, you can see how now that is impacting the bottom portion of the graph because that's the shadows. And when you actually look at what's being impacted, highlights, it's increasing the brightness of my face, the clothing, the screen, whereas the shadows, it's increasing this area. Right now you can see more of the detail on that shelf, right? Whereas before it's kind of crushed and you can't make out that detail. Now moving over to the left-hand graph here, the only difference here is that it's taken those 3 colors and separated them. In this middle one, they're all overlapping, whereas on this left one, we're seeing the red, green, and blue channels individually. So again, if you look at the right section of each color, red, green, and blue, you can see as my thumb and hand moves up, so does that side of that color graph. This is all very, very important when it comes to color grading, and later on in the video, we're gonna rely on these graphs a ton. But anyways, really quick, walking through how these tools work. Up first, we have temperature. This slider makes your image look cooler or warmer. So on the left, you can see it makes it look like I'm living in an ice castle, and on the right, it's like I'm in a volcano. And again, graphically, you can see when I push it to the left, the blue is going up crazy high and the red goes down. And when I push it to the right, the red goes up high and the blue goes down. After that, we have the tint, which controls the balance of green and magenta in your image. On the left-hand side, we're increasing the green, and on the right-hand side, we're increasing the red and the blue, which is basically magenta. These two sliders right here are crucial when it comes to solving common beginner mistakes. After that, we have the saturation slider, which is the intensity of the colors in your video. All the way to the left, your colors are gone and it's black and white. All the way to the right, you basically look like an Oompa Loompa from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. After that, we have the exposure slider, which is the common film term for overall brightness. So if we bring this to the left, the entire image gets darker, and you can see we've smushed all the data on the graph towards the bottom because that's where the shadows are. And then vice versa, if we increase this, you can see our image gets super bright and we've pushed a lot of data up towards the top. Now, contrast represents the difference between the bright and dark areas of your image. So you can see as we increase the contrast, we're basically stretching the highs higher and then the lows lower on the graph. And when we reverse this, it's squishing that graph together, decreasing the distance between the highlights and the shadows, making the image look super flat and washed out like we have now. Now, we've already covered highlights and shadows. Highlights are just the bright parts of your image. Shadows are just the dark parts of your image. And without getting too technical here, whites and blacks are very similar to highlights and shadows. As we increase the whites, we are just raising that top part of the graph. We could bring it down, obviously, in the opposite direction. And then the same thing with the black slider here. You can see this is a very hard control over the floor of that graph. It's just raising it up, really washing out that image. And then vice versa, we're slamming everything down into the bottom there as we bring this down. Now, you might be wondering, what happens to the data when it goes, let's say, underneath the bottom of the graph? Or what happens to the data when it goes all the way to the top? That is a really important concept in color grading. You're basically losing the data when it goes beyond the extent of the graph, and we don't really want that to happen. You'll notice here, looking at the shelf in the background, as it stands right now, you can't make out basically any detail. You can't tell what's on the shelf over there. It is just like a black hole. And that's because down here on the graph, you can actually see this is the shelf right here, and those shadows are smushed right down into that line. If we come to the shadows and increase it, we're bringing that detail back up above the bottom of the graph, and now you can start to make out what's actually there. And the same thing goes on the other side of the graph. As you increase the whites, now all of a sudden we have stuff that's really hitting that top of the graph, and now you can't actually see the wrinkles and freckles on my face anymore. A lot of the detail in my hand is gone. A lot of the texture in my shirt, you just totally cannot see. And that's because that data has gone above the extent of the graph and it's no longer visible. A common term for this in filmmaking is clipping your highlights. When highlights are clipped, you can no longer see them. And on the opposite side, we have crushing your blacks. Once they are crushed, they're beneath that graph and you can no longer see them. So how do we move forward with this information? Well, when you're color grading, you want to keep a close eye on that graph and where the data is sitting. If you have a ton of stuff down here at the bottom, you know your image might be a little too dark and you might want to bring up your shadows, bring up your blacks a little bit, and then vice versa. If all of your data was up at the top, you've probably overexposed your image and you want to bring that down. Now, moving on, we have the brilliant slider, and this is something unique to Capcut. You wouldn't really see it in a lot of other editing programs. It's basically their own kind of proprietary slider. It's gonna increase the highlights, increase the exposure, and increase the contrast a little bit at the same time. Just kind of brightens up your image overall, and it does look good a lot of times, I'm not gonna lie. So I usually will increase it slightly, but just know it's not like a technical film term or anything like that. After that, we have sharpen. I would never touch this. It basically makes your footage look like it was shot on a digital camera from 10 years ago. It's just like cartoony and not really realistic. So I would leave that down. You want that kind of like filmic, blurry quality to your video to a certain degree. After that, we have clarity, which is like another form of contrast. You can see it's increasing the brights and decreasing the shadows, kind of stretching that contrast a bit more. Particles adds grain to your footage, right? It makes it look older. Maybe you're doing a flashback sequence and you want something to look like it was recorded on an old VHS tape. That would be the effect for you. We also have fade here, which similarly brings up those blacks, gives you more of a faded look. And then last but not least, we have the vignette slider. This adds at the high end, kind of like a dark circle around your image. And on the low end, it adds a white circle around your image. Very often for my talking head setups, I will add a slight darker vignette around the talking head subject, just because you don't need to see what's on the edges of my frame. And I think it kind of focuses the viewer on the talking subject. But again, it's just totally personal preference. It's something I do. Now, two more quick but helpful features here. You'll notice we also have apply to all and then save as preset. Let's say you had a bunch of clips on your timeline and you wanted to color grade all of them the same exact way. All you need to do is color grade one of your clips and then hit apply to all. Saves you a lot of time not having to manually redo all this stuff. Alternatively, you could save all of the edits you've done as a preset and then reuse that preset on a select number of clips in your timeline, but not all of them. Now, before we move on to some of the advanced stuff like the HSL and curve subtabs, I want to show you how just using these basic controls, you can solve 90% of the mistakes people make when filming their footage. And I've got some examples we're gonna go through. So first up, this is our good example, all right? I filmed with the proper settings, everything looks pretty nice. You don't need to even color grade this much to get it looking great. Our next example though is a mistake I see people make all the time. They messed up their white balance and now the image is too warm. A fundamental key of color correcting and color grading is to look at your image and try to identify the one thing that's standing out as bad. Once you've identified that, you try to add the reverse. So here, if we look at this image, what's wrong with it? Well, it's definitely too warm. Again, if you look at it compared to our original, this just looks a little too orange. So the solution would be to add the opposite. So we'd go to the temperature and literally bring that temperature back down to where it looks like what our eyes would expect it to look like. This already looks so much more natural, right? This is the before, this is the after. Compare it to the original, right? We've just completely solved that clip that a lot of people would leave in their final video. It would mess with the flow. Up next, we have the opposite. Pretty straightforward. This thing's too cool. You can even see that there's just way too much blue up at the top here. If we select this clip, come to the temperature, increase it, look at that graph in the middle, right? The blue and the red and the green are just totally out of alignment. We take that, increase the temperature, and look at them. All of a sudden, they start to overlap perfectly, and our image looks so much better. Up next, we have an overexposed shot. It's just way too bright. Very simple, select this. First off, what I would try to do is bring all of the exposure down a decent amount. That looks pretty good. And we're really focusing on the face of our subject because that's always what your viewers are gonna key in on most. After that, we'll come down to the highlights and try to bring that down as well. But you'll notice here, looking at the graph, even though the top of that graph is beneath, the full height, we still have this line, and that's because those highlights were permanently clipped. It was filmed in a way that was so overexposed, we lost all that data, and we can try to bring it down. It looks better than the original, but you can see that it's impossible to recover some of that data on the face. Now, in contrast to this, let's go to our underexposed example, right? Very, very dark. Let's select it. Now we can do the opposite. We'll increase the exposure, increase the shadows, increase the highlights. We're looking a lot better here. Contrast this to the overexposed clip that we tried to save, and it really doesn't look good. I'd prefer this clip, the one that we underexposed. Now, I did this on purpose because it's a lesson in content creation. When it comes to slightly overexposing or underexposing your footage, typically it's better to underexpose your footage because you can more regularly bring up the shadows without losing any important detail compared to overexposing your footage. Cameras are much more likely to clip those highlights early on and you just won't be able to save it. So despite the fact that this clip originally looked like this, we were able to get it looking pretty similar to the good example. So that does it for our basics, and now it's time to get a bit more advanced. We're gonna do that by starting with a clip that was filmed in a log format. Now, if you don't know what log is, it's basically a picture profile that you can select on most modern cameras that shoots your footage in this ultra flat and low contrast style that you see now. When you look at our graph here, you can see almost all of that information is kind of compressed together towards the middle. This obviously doesn't look good, but it's done for a very important reason. With all of the data compressed like this, you actually have a lot more detail stored in that video file. We just have to use color grading tools to unlock that detail. At the end of the day, if you take a regular clip like we've been using up until this point, or that same clip filmed in a log format but color graded, that log clip will look better because it has a higher dynamic range. So the next tools we cover are going to be crucial for color grading log footage, and we're going to jump over to the curves tab here. Now in total, we have 4 curves that we can work with. We have the Luma, the red, the green, and the blue. The luma curve controls all of the light data for the entire image, whereas red, green, and blue control only the data associated with those specific colors. For example, if I take the blue curve right here and I just select it and drag it down, look at the graph over there. The only thing that's being impacted for the most part is that blue section. And as we decrease the blue, we're decreasing the intensity of that color in the image, which in turn basically adds the opposite, right? When you remove blue and all that's left is red and green, you're gonna get an image that looks like this. So that's how the individual colors work. The top one, the luma curve, controls everything together. So if I grab the middle of this curve and bring it down, you can see all of that data is going down and vice versa when I bring it up. So why this is such a powerful tool is because it gives you really specific control over a lot of different elements of your image. So right now we've got this log clip and it's super flat. All this data is condensed in the middle. We want to use these curves to stretch that data out and make our image look more natural. People teach how to do this in a lot of different ways, but I think I have one of the easiest. What you're going to do to start is come down to the bottom left-hand side here, drag this point and bring it to the right until that data is just about touching the bottom of that graph, okay? We've stretched out the bottom. Now we're gonna do the opposite with the top. This part represents the highlights in your image, and so we're gonna drag that to the left, increasing the highlights, stretching out that data until it's much closer to the top. So what we've done there, if we toggle this on and off, is we've just added a ton of contrast back into our image. We haven't added a lot of color data yet. We've just been impacting the light, the luma data within your scene. If we go back to the basic tab and hit the saturation slider and bring that all the way up, look at this. Right now, we have an image that's starting to look really, really good. Now, despite stretching this data out a lot, we still have a ton that's kind of condensed here in the middle. So we learned about this earlier. The contrast slider is going to stretch that out even further, right? Decompress that data and give our image a lot more range. We had this before, and now we have this after. You can see it just looks way more realistic and lifelike. And that right there is a sequence of steps you can use to correct basically any type of footage you're working on. Start with the curves, decompress that data as much as you can, increase the saturation, and then use that contrast slider to fine-tune things until you like the way it looks. Now, because this is a talking head setup, like I said earlier, one final step that I would typically add is a little bit of a vignette. I don't really care for you to see this shelf over here or the door back there. And I think that vignette just draws a little bit more attention to me in the center of the frame. So that's a basic example of making a clip look significantly better than the way it was shot. Let's get into a more creative example. Here we have another clip that was shot in a log picture profile. It was from a commercial shoot in Norway, which was super fun. But we want to make this look good and then add a little bit more, pizzazz to it. So we'll quickly select it and do the same exact process we did before. We're going to come down to our curves. We're going to drag this down until our data is basically touching the bottom. Same thing, drag this up. All right, now we've decompressed that data. We're going to go back to basic, increase our saturation here. Now we've added a lot more color to the scene. Let's bring a little bit more contrast into this. I think the clouds are a little too bright and overpowering, so we'll bring the highlights down, bring that contrast back a little bit more. And now we have an image that looks significantly better than the way it started. But we have some really unique elements of color in this shot that I think I'd like to pop even more. And that really is the actor's hat right here, and then this building in the background. This is gonna bring us to our next advanced tool, which is the HSL subtab. Now, HSL stands for Hue, Saturation, and Luminance. And what this tool allows you to do is basically select one particular color in your image and impact the hue, saturation, and luminance of just that color, nothing else. It won't change any other aspect of your image. So with that in mind, it gives you really specific and creative control over certain elements of your image. It's kind of like a superpower. So HSL stands for Hue, Saturation, and Luminance. For some reason, Capcut basically renamed it to brightness. That's what luminance means. It's like the brightness of your image. So it really should just be like the HSB slider now. But anyways, you already know what saturation is. That's the intensity of a color. Hue hue is basically the balance of that unique color. So for example, if you think of green on a color wheel, you basically have a green in the dead middle, but then you have the green as it shifts towards the other colors that surround it on the color wheel, basically in the right and the left direction. The hue slider shifts the balance of that color towards or away from one of those sides. So that's a basic idea of how the tool works. To show it in action here, I'm gonna select this little color picker tool here. What that does is it allows me to hover over any element of the image and select exactly what color I want to manipulate. So I want to manipulate this hat right here. So we'll just click on it. And now check this out. If I bring the saturation down, it's really impacting the hat more so than any other aspect of the image. And if I increase it, now that color is popping, which looks super, super good. Same thing here with the brightness, right? We can increase how bright the hat in that building is in the back because they're basically the same color. And look at that, as I increase it, it's crazy how selective that edit is to just the hat. And then on the opposite side, we could obviously bring the brightness down and make it look much darker, but I like how it pops with a little added brightness. And then hue, again, shifts the balance of that color. So to the left, you can see it's changing the hue, and to the right, it's changing the hue in the opposite direction towards more of an intense yellow color. This is color grading at its finest, selectively editing different parts of an image. So now we can play through this clip start to finish. The before is something that you'd never see in a finished video, whereas the final grade really pops off and looks more cinematic. Now, last but not least here, I wanna show you how LUTs and presets work. I'll also give you my favorite one, and I'll show you one effect that I do think really enhances your footage. So we have this really cool slow motion clip here that was filmed on my iPhone in Apple Log. Now, if you do have an iPhone and you're trying to get the best looking footage possible, I would highly recommend shooting in Apple Log because it really does unlock a ton of potential with that camera. Now I've color graded a ton of this footage and I actually created my own LUT for grading Apple Log footage. So all I have to do is with the footage selected, I'll make sure that I'm in the adjust and then basic tab, and then we have our LUTs here. Now I've got a bunch installed, bunch of different smartphone LUTs, but the one that I want to use is my Apple Log LUT right here. And right off the bat, looking at the before and after, I think this looks so good when it's applied to Apple Log footage. Once this is applied, I can then make any adjustments that I want. For example, if I wanted it to look a little bit more like it's at sunset, I could increase the temperature here. If I wanted to desaturate the greens, I could come up to the HSL, grab the color picker tool, select green on the grass, and then I could decrease the saturation there to give it a bit more of like a muted and moody look. Again, I think that looks really cool. We could also boost the saturation. If this was like a lawn care commercial, that would probably make a lot more sense. Now, there's one more effect I also like to use in Capcut. It's completely free. To access it, you want to come up to your screen here and click on the Effects sub-tab and then search Luminance. This one right here is going to pop up. It has no diamond on it, so it's included in the free plan. Select that and drag it on down on your footage. Now, it's going to look pretty dang crazy at first, but what it basically does is it selects the highlights of your image and gives it a little bit of this like hazy glow, which I think looks really cool. And when used properly, it can definitely upgrade the look of your footage. Now, I would not let it sit on my footage at this strength. I would actually, with the clip selected, we have our effects tab up here now. I would bring down the filter. That way it's not impacting the color at all. You can see it really increases the blue saturation. So we'll bring that down. And then all I want to do is manipulate the strength. This is basically no effect at all. We've got a slight haze and then a lot of haze. And I think it just gives your footage this like dreamy, smooth, almost like filmic quality. I love this effect, but you got to use it in moderation. Now, if you ever click off your footage and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I edit that effect? Just select it again, come up to the video tab, basic, and then you will see the effects right here. You can see luminance is applied. I can hit the pencil icon to edit it, or I could delete it entirely. Now, moving back over to the Adjust tab here, you might be wondering what the Color Wheel and Mask sub-tabs are for. Long story short, they are only included in the Pro subscription, and I don't think they're necessary at all, so I wouldn't worry about them if I were you. But with that all being said, you're now an expert at color correction and color grading in Capcut. You know how all the tools work, and it really just comes down to experimenting with your footage to get that unique look that you really want. If you want to download the Apple Log LUT for free, along with a good handful of other editing templates and LUTs that I use every day, I've got another link in the description for you. You just put your email in and we'll send it right to you. Hopefully you appreciate those freebies, and if you do, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. And beyond that, if you are really serious about mastering all aspects of professional content creation, I highly recommend checking out our 14-day filmmaker course bundle. For one insanely low payment, you get lifetime access to a bundle of content creation courses that will teach you how to master the process of shooting and editing professional content on both your smartphone and professional cameras. If you're trying to shoot YouTube videos, social media content like Reels, TikToks, and Shorts, and even commercials to grow your brand, this bundle will be a game changer for you. You'll learn everything there is to shooting professional content on your phone and professional camera. You'll learn about the best gear that may or may not be worth buying. You'll learn how to use that gear to get the best results. You'll learn how to capture smooth and professional movements, how to record high quality audio. You'll learn how to light scenes like a Hollywood professional, and you'll get a ton of training on how to edit like a pro without having to spend hours editing every one of your videos. We have a super in-depth training series on Capcut alone, but we also teach all the other major editing apps. By enrolling, you'd also get lifetime access to our students-only community, which has over 100,000 other creators just like you around the globe. We host weekly live Q&A calls in the group where you can ask questions, get feedback on your content. There is so much in this bundle. It is literally insane. If you want to enroll, there's a link in the description below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.